The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena. The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, the television screen is part of the physical structure of the brain.
All right, and welcome back to episode 19, if you can believe that, of The Outer Reels. I'm here with Jason.
Hello. We just keep trucking on.
Yep.
Who cares if no one's listening?
That's right. We're having a good time, though.
That's all that matters.
And speaking of good times, Latitude Zero from 1968 was my pick this week, since we're going into the depths of Japan, as was fitting for this movie.
Impressive that you found another English language Japanese movie.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and I think this was a big part of Japan trying to break into the U.S. market too, is by attacking on, current American actors to try and get an international market for themselves.
What's his name? Coming straight off of Destroy All Monsters. So,
That's right, yeah. This is directed by Ishiro Honda, a man who needs no introduction, basically invented what we know as the kaiju. His very first credit is 1934. He was an assistant director.
Wow.
Yeah. But did you know he was a military man, and he was a POW in China in the Sino-Japanese War?
Oh, wow.
Like 1945, for like 6 months he was there.
Oh, yeah.
So what can we say?
I mean, right off the bat, we got Cesar Romero in the opening credits. I got very excited.
Thought you did. I guess I was figuring, I don't know. I was like, oh, Jason's probably going to like this because he played the very best rendition of the Joker.
Well, he played a rendition of the Joker.
Still the best one, 1966.
Yeah, arguably in a series I rather enjoyed.
Best Joker. Okay, Jason, you step into an elevator and Kinji Fukasawa is there, our friend from our last two films. And it's 1969. Kinji hasn't pulled a feature yet, and you want to convince him you've got money, you want to make a movie. How do you pitch him Latitude Zero in 1969?
Well, shouldn't he be begging to do Latitude Zero in 1969?
Probably. I would beg to do it now. It's an awesome movie.
I would describe this as, let's take Godzilla, let's mash it with Jules Verne. Let's be some significant inspiration for the Thunderbirds. Actually, I think Thunderbirds came before this one.
Yeah, 65.
Yeah, so then let's take some inspiration from Thunderbirds as well.
Definitely, especially with the way the miniatures look in the water and stuff. Some great looking stuff.
Yep.
This is a fun movie. I would probably try and sell it and just say a collective of deep sea explorers, and they have a problem with their submarine, and they're rescued by this strangely supernatural but normal guy in a high-tech submarine, and takes them to this underwater oasis where there's all sorts of happiness. And the guy explains that he's in a long-term battle with this evil guy named Malik. The Earthlings, you can call them Earthlings, but the humans help this guy fight the maniacal doctor who does animal experiments on a volcano.
Yeah, that's right. I should have brought up the island of Dr. Moreau while I was at it too, because Malik's certainly very much into that stuff.
Yeah, there's going to be some great stuff to get into. So
right off the bat, I want to mention the costumes though, because like 8-year-old me watching this movie would have really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And then 14-year-old me would have really enjoyed it for all sorts of new reasons. The costume choices, like male and female, but especially for females.
It is known widely among these types of movies that this is one of the best ones for the most outlandish wardrobe. Gold diving suits, which have a purpose if you paid attention to the
True.
and everything. Yeah, and there's a lot of this like 60s mod stuff, but everything's supposed to be high tech. It's great. It's a vibrant movie again. It's just they just don't make movies like this, and it looks good and it's fun.
I like how the doctor is essentially wearing a bikini with like this see-through medical or this transparent, like rain slicker medical outfit over top of it, and it's just like, okay.
You check out Virgin Air; their early outfits for all the stewards have these really cool plastic rain bubbles that the girls would wear on the tarmac if it was spritzing, so their hair wouldn't get wet. It looks really cool. So the movie starts out, and we get a little intro. It's the spring in 1969, and there's the largest ocean research boat, Japanese research boat called the Fuji. It's searching into the study of this thing called the Cromwell Current, which they're looking into for high-speed submarine travel. And they explain
They describe it as like an undersea jet stream.
Yeah, exactly. This movie is laden with great visual effects, great miniatures. So right out of the gate, we get some shots showing the workers hanging off the front of the boat while they lower this submersible down into the water.
Yeah, it's not a bad comp given its age, and it's ambitious, certainly for the day. It almost works. I can see myself as a kid buying it. You see all the flaws now, but
it's used cleverly, kind of like Starship Invasions. When they do it right, and it's locked off correctly, and the optical's split in the right spot. It's pretty neat. Inside the sub that's being lowered down the water, we get introduced to our three main characters. We got Ken Tashiro, and he's played by Akira Takarada, of course, who we starred in Godzilla. Dr. Jules Mason, played by Masumi Okada. So he actually shows up again in Battle Royale. So if we're looking for a link to Kinji Fukasaku movies, there it is. It's pretty good. So that's Message from Space and Virus are already connected to this movie. And Perry Lawton, he's played by Richard Jekyll. He's an awesome actor. He's in all sorts of stuff, but I'll say that he's a double down on John Carpenter movies. He was in Starman, and then he was in Black Moon Rising right after that.
Oh, I know I've never seen Black Moon Rising.
I know we've talked about this, and I was disappointed the last time you told me that.
I do not remember the conversation, but I was probably drinking. But again, Starman's one of my favorites of his.
Oh, it's great. I love Starman.
Yeah.
Very good movie.
I want to comment that the three of them in their sub are all wearing matching outfits but different colored hoodies. It's like they're members of the Wiggles or something. It's kind of funny.
I didn't look at it like that, but you're right.
But they are, yeah. They're like primary colors.
Yeah. And they certainly love their short shorts in the 60s.
Yeah. And then, they've got matching hoodies and short shorts.
So they make it to the bottom of the ocean, and they're about 300 feet deep. And Perry notices something out of the porthole, and he says, "Oh, look, all the fish are swimming in one direction."
Yeah, they're all leaving the area.
Which should be clued into something, because a volcano erupts underground immediately after he says that. It blows their little toy submersible underwater that tumbles across the bottom of the little fish tank that they filmed it in.
Well, they're tethered to the ship, and the ship tries to bring them up, but the cable snaps.
Yeah, and we get a wide shot here of a really cool volcano explosion above water, and it's also a great visual effects shot because there's a bunch of cloud tank stuff, but they've got all the different colors in there, and it looks really good.
It does. It looks pretty cool.
And then you see some lightning strikes coming through it. It's pretty rad. But clearly this is a pretty big deal, this volcano exploding under the ground. Not really much time passes, but submersible is just sort of laying there on its side, and two divers just swim up to it, like, randomly. They're wearing these, like, gold bikini and gold outfits, or gold.
They're gold. They're gold swimsuits. The guy's in a gold Speedo, and she's in a gold bikini.
Cut inside of the submersible, and everybody's knocked out, but Perry doesn't have a shirt on anymore.
Yeah, if I remember right, he was trying to do something, and that's why he had taken his off. But yeah, I don't exactly remember what he was doing now, but he was up to something, and there was a reason why he took it off.
And then just as quickly, the divers attach a tow cable to their submersible and starts winching their submersible up, and then you get this big wide undershot of this giant model, which is cool. It's this big, sleek looking high-tech submarine, and they're winching their little submersible up inside it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I do have a note here I just noticed that says, "I don't think underwater volcanoes work that way." It's, this is the first point where you suspend some disbelief. You're going to do that a lot in this movie. But,
where do we get to Malik's lair?
Yeah, but I do. My next note is this sweet model work, though. Because it is pretty cool.
Yeah, the stuff looks great, and I think the thing that makes the stuff looks good is there's always good lighting on it. You can push the suspense of the physics and stuff, but it's just always lit well. There's no weird shadows or something. The effort's put in.
Again, it's not Star Wars or Alien or anything like that, but those movies came a decade later.
So they all wake up in the med bays. Perry notices that he's all healed. Like, immediately, he's like, "Wait a minute, I had scratches and cuts on me, and I'm fine now." And they're all just feeling good, like, extremely quick. And then that's when we get introduced to Dr. Ann Barton, played by Linda Haynes, and she comes in also awesome gold wardrobe, as this movie is the theme.
I've got a note here that's quite the outfit, Doc.
It's it's very much I don't know how else you would describe it, but if you controlled a super futuristic submarine at the bottom of the ocean, that's probably how everybody would dress. So Jules is missing right now, but Perry and Toshiro get given these orange jumpsuits, and Dr. Barton says, hey, like, Jules is in a separate cabin. He's okay. We had to do some medical work on him. And you think that he's not doing very well or something, but they don't really go there right away. And then they just kind of get a tour of this super submarine and this big control room that looks like some spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at this eruption from this volcano, or they're studying it. That's the purpose of them being there, I guess.
Yeah, like the scientist guy says.
Dr. Mackenzie we're introduced to.
Dr. Mackenzie, yes, thank you. Joseph Cotton.
He was in Silent Green.
Yes, he was. So he makes a point of saying, like, the whole point of there is they knew the volcano was going to happen. They knew the eruption was coming, and they're just there to observe it. He's a scientist, and apparently he's 200 years old or something, but which he kind of just casually lets slip.
He dropped some big bombs in this room, and you don't really know much more about how or why, but you just have to assume.
Yeah, so he makes some comments, and then that's what they're doing. And then, our Dr. Barton comes out and basically says, we got to get this guy to a hospital. We can't do enough for him on the sub.
Right. And then this is the moment here where, the other guys are sort of wandering around, like Perry and Toshiro is sort of rumbling around the bridge just looking at stuff, and they're just curious how it all works and everything. And Mackenzie sort of says, oh, you like this ship? This is my ship. It's called the Alpha. Then Perry's like, who's paying for this? Like, what is this thing? And he just says, hey, we're not funded by any nation. We're not part of anything. We're neutral. And then Perry sees this plaque, and it says, it's like a brass plaque or bronze plaque. It says, launched in 1805 in Scotland or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
He's like, 1805, we haven't had a submarine or whatever. That'll make this 160 years old. And Mackenzie, instead of being like, no, you don't know anything about it, he's just like, well, actually, we've been working with subs since 1620. You're like, oh. And then he just moves on. And so we just have no idea of what this world is, or who made this machine, or how they operate, or what.
Yeah, and they don't tell us later either. You get little snippets here and there that, it's like essentially this science commune that they're a part of. They don't give you much of anything in terms of world building. You're just supposed to roll with it.
Lacking thing in this movie is a sense of payoff on what this place is about, which, by the way, he refers to as Latitude Zero, because at the beginning, when they're looking at when they're doing the exploration, they're at longitude 180, latitude 0, and that's how they come to this location. So what you're saying is Mackenzie, he aborts the mission to bring Jules back to get help, and he tells is it Toho, the guy who's the pilot, and he's just like, set to light speed. I was like, wait a minute, we got light speed underwater?
Not possible, but okay.
Yeah, they plot a course to latitude 0, and Toshiro points out on the map, he's just like, but there's no land there. And then that's when Mackenzie's like, aha, but you'll see. And then...
Isn't this, though, where they run into the black submarine?
Not yet. So they get on their journey. And then we cut, and this is the intro to Mavic and Lucerita. And as I said, Mavic, played by Cesar Romero, so he's the villain. And his wife, I guess, or wench,
I assume
Lucerita.
So, yeah.
So
how are you engaged?
I'm married, dude.
You guys get married already?
Married. We're inside Mavic and Lucerita's like lair, and it is an awesome place. It just looks like a Bond villain, but like got more style.
Yep.
It's got a woman's touch. There's lots of cool animal furs and stuff everywhere. It's very cool.
Yes, I know you like the
dude. The stuff looks great. So Lucerita here, she's played by Patricia Medina, and she was actually married during this movie to Joseph Cotton, who's played Dr. Mackenzie.
Oh,
so it's kind of funny that she is the wife of the evil guy in this, even though in real world she's the wife of the good guy.
Yeah.
And then so this is when, after we meet them, and I like how in this whole movie, anytime we cut to Mavic and his wife, they're just drinking cocktails. Like there's just
yes. It's the late 60s, Sam. That's just how it was. But yes, it's always cocktail hour.
That's pretty good.
And but Malik embodies the evil scientist stereotype. He's got like flowing outfits and stuff, and he's just like, I just love how, and we'll get to it later, but he just abandons his entire plan at one point. He's like, no time for that now. He's about to get what he wants, and it's like, too late.
Yeah, there's almost no sense of urgency, and then there's too much in his character arc is not much there. But so this is when Maverick, somehow he's aware that the Alpha, which is Mackenzie's submarine, is on the move. And Maverick has been tracking this thing for a long time, and he doesn't like Captain Mackenzie, and he doesn't like the Alpha. He doesn't like anybody, but we never find out really why.
He doesn't like any. It doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't want it. He hates everything about Latitude 0, or LZ as they call it. That entire group. It's basically he's the evil to their good, and but yeah, there's no real reason for it other than I guess he's into some sketchy science shit, and they probably don't like it, because he is into some really
the best parts of the movie
sketchy
to come
stuff.
for sure. So Maverick sees that the Alpha is on the move, and I got to say that this movie is riddled with everybody who has consoles and command consoles that show video camera footage of places where there wouldn't be cameras, like outside the submarines and everything. It's one of those like classic tropes, but this movie does it a lot more than most. So Mackenzie sends out this thing called the Black Shark, which is another very cool looking submarine.
Yeah, it's got like a nice shark fin on it.
It's pretty cool design. And this is captained by Captain Kuryoga. So this is played by Hikaru Kurioki. I'm trying really hard with these names, I swear. And I just want to say, this was her one and only role ever. This was it.
Oh, wow.
And she still has a higher star meter than both of us currently on IMDb.
Well, I mean, I'm like 5 times higher than you right now. So
yeah, I know.
For no weird reason whatsoever. Yeah, I guess it's because I'm working again.
It's funny how that happens.
But it is. Well, actors are always going to be way higher than any of us.
Yeah.
But, that is hilarious.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Yeah. I only have like 130 credits. That's fine, lady.
Yeah. 1 credit, man. Well, that's a good credit to have because this movie, again, is great. And so we go on to a great little sequence of miniatures chasing each other and in this chasm in the ocean. And it's the Black Shark chasing the Alpha, and they're firing torpedoes at each other. It looks good. It's very, like you said, it's very Thunderbirds, but it's great.
Yep. It's a couple scenes where it's like nice wires, but other than that, it's it's well done for the most part.
Yeah. And Captain Mackenzie, of course, in the Alpha, manages to outmaneuver the Black Shark in a chasm. And Captain Kuryoga fires again at him. And Perry makes a notice that, like, because, again, there's cameras at the bottom of the ocean where they can see where all these torpedoes are moving because they're just watching it on this console. And Perry's kind of like, wait, those aren't torpedoes because, torpedoes then were dumbfire, right? They just go straight. And these things are carving around through the canyons and doing all sorts of stuff. And Mackenzie just says, you're right. Activate the ice cloak. Those are heat seekers. And then now there's some magical switch on the Alpha where he turns and pulls a bunch of levers and then it super cools the Alpha and then the heat seekers can't find him anymore.
Well, I mean, Malik does say at some point that Mackenzie is constantly upgrading the Alpha.
That's true.
So, like, every time he encounters it, he's got some new bag of tricks up his sleeves, basically. So this is obviously the latest one.
Yeah. They avoid the encounter and dust their hands, and they're well on their way now. And Mackenzie finally approaches, or the Alpha approaches, this big glowing dome at the bottom of the ocean. And it's another cool visual effect shot. It's just a giant hemisphere at the bottom, and the submarine comes towards it. And I think Perry's just like, wait, why is there a sun under the sea? And Mackenzie pulls the Alpha inside and it goes through the dome, but the Black Shark can't get through. It's like a force field for them.
Yeah.
Like, this is how he loses them.
Yeah, because the bad guys know where LZ is, but they can't get into it.
Right, that's what it is.
It's impenetrable to them.
Right, so the Alpha has some ability to come in and out, and they can't. And this is actually another point. We cut back to Maverick, and he's drinking cocktails again, and he's all pissed, and Lucerita turns around, and she's in this chair this time. That's awesome. It's this like giant animal fur chair. And at first, I was like, this is a cool aesthetic. But then later, once you realize all the experiments that Maverick does there, You're like,
These are
oh,
all
this is
leftover.
why these are
They've got all these extra skins kicking around.
exactly. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't even make that connection.
It's
That's
pretty
hilarious.
good foreshadowing, actually. It's pretty
Yep.
cool.
That's up there within Shrek, where they zoom in on the robin's nest with the 3 eggs, and then they pan back out, and it's 3 eggs in a frying pan.
I never saw it.
Really? Oh,
No.
it's you should watch it just for that scene. It's brilliant.
I'll watch the clip. We cut back to the Alpha, and now it's inside Latitude 0. It surfaces, and it's an entire biome in there. It's like there's mountains, there's a city, there's trees, there's people walking around.
It looks like southern Japan.
Yeah, it looks very cool. Everything's clean. It looks like this place with peace. People are, running around. Everybody's happy. We learn that sort of, Perry's sort of asking about, and you get a little, basically that Malik and Mackenzie have been at war for some amount of time. And apparently, if it wasn't for Latitude 0 and the Alpha, Earth wouldn't be the place it is. Malik has other plans for civilization, and Mackenzie has burrowed himself inside of Latitude 0 and is creating a whole society down there, and they're constantly trying to stop Malik doing whatever he's doing. And they're both over 200 years old.
Yeah. And he basically explains to them that, because I think one of them asks, probably Perry, asks them, like, why aren't you like sharing this with the rest of humanity? And they're basically like slipping it out slowly, all their great discoveries and abilities and things like that. It's kind of like they're Men in Black, right? Like they just slip out the odd thing here and there.
Yeah, like
and
they're doing loads of testing to make sure that it's all ready. And it's an interesting idea, really. I like this movie. I really like this movie.
Apparently, you should marry it.
Well, if I could only have got a hold of my physical copy, which I have in a box on PAL.
I was going to say, is it PAL? It's got to be.
Of course it is, yeah. And Perry's still just trying to come to grips with everything, and he's not buying into it. And he's asking everybody, and he looks at Dr. Ann, and he's like, well, how old is she? And Mackenzie says, well, Perry, even in Latitude 0, it's not polite to ask a lady's age.
Exactly. But we should point out, like, Dr. Barton is like, gets to the ambulance. She gets Jules gets him on to into the ambulance, and the ambulance drives off. And did you notice? I am shocked you love this movie so much. All the vehicles are electric, Sam.
Well, technically not.
But you know what? No, well, all the cars and stuff are. But when you think about it, it makes sense because they're in like in a closed ecosystem. They can't have like all those emissions and stuff.
Right.
So it's smart, and it's really forward thinking for the day and age.
Yeah, it's funny because it's so ridiculous, but they think about the science here, even though it's so outlandish. You know, there's effort put in.
They have no money. They have electric cars. They've got no smog. It's quite the collective that they have, and I use that term intentionally because it does seem to be very, very communist-like in the pure sense of the word. So I'm not talking like what the Soviets or anything did with the former government, but they all seem to just work for the betterment and interest of science. Like even their like when they go to order food and they all come on a conveyor belt essentially that gets delivered around the house. It's just like whatever scientist is on task for it that day is gets to play around and make food.
Right.
And so it's like. How big is the city though? If you've got one guy playing chef,
yeah.
So
it has all the tropes of like, what do people consider luxury? And so they kind of get the tour and the vibe, and he comes into this big headquarters, and he's like, here's the main area, and he's like, and there's a model of the city, and it pulls back, and he's like, this is Latitude 0. And did you notice what the model looked like?
No,
it's the city of Atlantis.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. This movie's really clever, dude. So the model is like got the perfect rings and the concentric ring and the crossroads through it and everything. It looks exactly like what Atlantis is. So it's kind of a neat spin on it. But they basically take Perry and Toshiro to their room and just like, oh, here's where you'll be staying, and make yourself at home, and there's clothes here. And Toshiro's like, is there like a commons to eat or something? And Mackenzie's like, no, just order from here. And then it just shows this screen with like food on it. And he's like, wow. And it's all these like, everything looks like, remember those like cookbooks from the 60s that are like things to bring over, like Jell-O molds and stuff like that. It all looks like that.
Oh man, my mom had this box, and it was filled with like these index card size things, and they were all recipes.
Yep. Or like flashcards.
Yeah, but this is all recipes, and
That's
it was just
funny.
like it's clever when you think about it, because you don't have to have a whole book in front of you and try to hold it open.
And it's laminated so it doesn't get messed up.
And exactly, and you just got a card in front of you.
It's clever, just like Latitude Zero is.
Yeah, well, like Tupperware.
So this is the dawn of Tupperware. Maybe Tupperware came from Latitude Zero.
It probably was one of their gifts.
And they're like, you know what? This is ready. We'll send it up here. We don't know how to get spaghetti orange out of it yet, but we're going to release it to Earth anyways.
And no one would ever figure that out.
No. Not even Malik. Maybe that's what Malik's been working on. So, let's see. Yeah, just good wide shots of the city, some opticals, some really cool miniatures. This place looks nice. It's kind of cool. Perry and Toshiro still not sure like how this whole place works, but so they're walking around like a main lobby area, and they're interacting now with a lot of the citizens. And Perry sees this woman, and she's in like hard stitched, rugged sort of looking wagon clothes, and Perry sort of said, "Wow, she just kind of stands out." And Mackenzie says, well, some people stay dressed the way they were when they got to Latitude Zero. So you get this idea that they've been gobbling up people all through time. And whenever they pull them in, they just keep their style or whatever. So you get this idea that they've been bringing people in.
Some of them do, some of them don't. Malik prefers a white and gold giant V-neck down to his navel kind of shirt.
And he has a cool green kerchief, though, as well.
Yes, he does. Fred from Scooby-Doo would be jealous.
The wardrobe again is great in this movie. It's pretty fun.
Yes, it's quite wild. One thing I thought was kind of interesting, one thing they could have done and they didn't, was Mackenzie, essentially like locks the two of them in their room for the night.
Right.
Says, well, we'll come back in the morning. And this is where I thought maybe things get a little sinister and stuff, because now they've basically been abducted and locked in here. And their friend's gone. They don't know what's happened to him. This all could have been, funky and interesting, but this is not that movie.
No.
Just comes back in the morning. Hey guys, how you doing? Let's show you around.
Yeah, this is your Saturday afternoon movie for sure.
Yeah.
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 Well, Mackenzie sort of talks about, again, there's no war here. Everything's perfect. Apparently, all the clothes they make are from gold because they extract the gold out of the seawater. And Mackenzie says something funny, too. He's like, we don't even have to do laundry.
Plant decorations and indoor plants are just like covered up by diamonds.
Yeah, like potting mix is basically.
Yeah.
Perry like looks at it and there's like a planter. And he's like, whoa, these are diamonds. And there's stacks of them. And he's like, can I take one? And Mackenzie's like, take them all. He's like, they have no value to us. We use them as cutting tool and decorations. And Perry's just like slamming these things into like a little tobacco pouch or something that he has.
Yep. Loads it up.
So Jules is being repaired in some kind of cryo tube. This is very much like a Fifth Element med bay type thing. Dr. Ann's monitoring him, and this thing is working. I guess it's fixing him.
Seems okay. Dr. Barton seems happy because she's been very, very worried about him.
Yeah, she's invested in him a lot, and she really hasn't said a word to him either.
All the girls want Jules.
Perry and Tsuru sort of are wondering, like, maybe they're dead. Is this paradise? Like, but then Perry starts like getting names of these people and realizing that everybody's here is kind of somebody famous or, a lecturer or a scientist or something like that who disappeared, but no body was found. And he has a great memory, apparently, because he remembers every single person. But he is they're talking over dinner, and their food they ordered just pops out of the wall on this conveyor, like you said. But this is kind of the idea, is that this place is being assembled of the greatest of the greats somehow. But that means, I think Mackenzie just like kidnaps people, I think.
Kind of. I mean, well, they have the scientists they're going to get, right? Like this is about this point where they start talking about this other scientist. He's on a boat to Hawaii where they're supposed to pick him up.
Dr. O'Connor.
Thank you. But he's developed this way of basically immunizing people from radiation. So then we find out Malik really wants them for that reason as well, and so does every other nation on Earth.
In the world of Ishiro Honda, getting rid of radiation is a big deal because kaijus don't attack anything anymore.
Exactly. Japan. This is only 25 years after they've been bombed. Yeah, radiation is very much a big thing to them. So this is where we have our basic plot now. They're supposed to go pick him up, but then Malik sends the black shark
to intercept. Yeah, and
to intercept.
He is Malik actually mentions to her. He said, to Kurage, he says, "I want you to do one more mission for me in the black shark before we retire you." And she's like, "Sure, I'll do the mission." And he's like, "You need to intercept the ship because the Alpha's going to intercept it, and we need the guy who's on board." So Kuryoga's like, "Okay, this is going to be my last mission," whatever that means at this time, but she seems excited about it.
Well, because she's in love with Malik, right? So much to Malik's wife's annoyance, Lucretia, is not happy with her. But Malik is using her because he knows she'll do anything for him.
Well, I mean, I get it. Like, you see his lair. He's just up there drinking cocktails all the time.
Freaking Cesar Romero, too, man. The guy oozes class.
Yeah.
He's got the riz, as the kids would say.
Jules is feeling better. He comes out of the med bay. And Mackenzie shows them how they get people from, I keep saying Earth, but how they get people from the surface to come to Latitude Zero. And to your point, where you're saying, all the cars are electric, Mackenzie shows them a little model of a car and says, "This is how we do it." And it's actually a light gold 1968 Charger, just like the one I have. But it has a little submarine top on it that clips onto it.
Yeah.
And it looks like this future submersible. And then you see this footage. They send these 68 Chargers up on the surface to pick up all of the people that they want to bring back to Latitude Zero, and they escort them. And essentially they do that with Dr. O'Connor, and him and his daughter get escorted to this boat, and now the boat is taking them out towards Latitude Zero. At some point, Mackenzie and the Alphas are going to intercept and bring him down underneath and continue to help cure the world.
I've got a note here. It's like, why didn't he fly to Hawaii? It's 1969. Why does he take a boat? So anyway, aside from the fact that it would ruin the movie.
I didn't think about that.
Not like he's even on a luxury liner or anything. He's basically on like a commercial steamer.
I guess the idea is that they want to have him on a basic transport so then they can nab him, but nobody knows what Latitude Zero is. I don't know. I think if you brought that question up in the prod room, they would just be like, "Shut up, Jason."
Yeah, I'd get smacked.
We go back to Malik, and he's really not doing anything other than saying, "Oh, Okada's on the route," and then he just pours another cocktail. There's not really much that happens in that scene.
Isn't this where the weird woman in the control center on the Alpha like does that weird point? She looks like she's doing some kind of dance move. Like she literally looks like she's like rocking out to ABBA or something, and because she's this lanky blonde in her white and see-through toga outfit thing, and she's got a headset on, and she does this. She doesn't just point with her hand or her fingers; it's her whole arm.
There's a bit of overacting here. I agree. This is her one bit,
and then she just kind of stares, all serious.
But this is quite a progression of time here, because we kind of know what's happening, but it kind of all happens really quickly, and then basically we see now we're back at Malik's place, and he's putting Captain Kuriyagi, he's putting her in a cage, and then he stuffs her in a cage, and then he shows Dr. Okada around his lair, and he's like, "What are you?" Okada's like, "What are you gonna do with her?" And he's like, "I have plans for her." And he's like, "Why don't you see my other works?" And then he opens the door, and what are hybrid Batman?
Three Batmen. Yeah,
they really are Batman.
It's like I don't know if they're merged with a fox as well because they're brown and furry.
Yeah,
and and they're just angry.
They are bipedal dudes in fuzzy pajamas with like weird bat faces and big wings. Yes. I mean, it's great. They look great.
They're awesome. They're just it's just like yes.
They're scary in a weird way, but they're pretty funny. But I guess
they're not really scary.
This is the first sort of idea we get into, like, wait a minute, this is what Malik's up to on his island. He makes Batman. or he breeds humans with these things.
Yeah, it turns out he's got the island of Dr. Moreau going on underneath.
Yeah. Malik, I think, tells Dr. O'Connor, like, you've got 12 hours, and he's going to force Dr. O'Connor to do what? I didn't really pick up on what.
Oh, he's going to give up what his secret formula is or whatever for the radiation vaccine.
Oh,
That's what
right.
He's got to give
That's
up.
what, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Otherwise, he's going to turn his daughter into something.
Something, yeah. O'Connor isn't too happy about that, but he has a secret tracker in his glasses, and he turns those on. And then on board the Alpha, the map lights up, and Mackenzie and everybody's just like, oh, there he is. And then the same thing. They said that there's no land there. And then Mackenzie like, that must be where Mavik's lair is. We've been trying to find that forever. And then we cut back to Malik. He's drinking another cocktail, and he's like, the tracker's being turned on. That'll bring the Alpha right to me, because he wants this damn ship. You know, that's his big thing.
He wants the Alpha more than anything, but it's funny because he wants the formula, but no, that Alpha is more important to him.
Yeah. And this is a funny sort of shift. I guess this would be where we enter essentially the third act here. And
Captain Kuriaga, whatever her name is.
Kuriaga,
thank you. She is like, she's coming on to him, right? And he's like, and she says, just one more time with you, please. And, his wife's like right there. Right. So, but he guides her over and says, sure, you just go in here and you wait. And he locks her in this room, and then he pushes another button, and this cage comes down from the ceiling. And I'm thinking, you just locked her in a room. Like, do you have to throw a cage on her too?
I thought that was funny too. There was
how demeaning do you need to be? It's right up there with the spaceship that blows up the shack in our last Message from Space. Like, it's just like, let's just add injury to insult here.
Yeah, because it's a small room, and the cage comes down on top of her, and it's maybe then 2 feet smaller than that. So that's a good point. I never thought about that, but it really doesn't make.
But
sense.
It's like just rub it in that you're his prisoner instead. Like you're in love with this man, and this is what he's done to you.
Yeah, so I think this is the shift for the third act right here, is that we go back and we're on the Alpha, and Mackenzie sees the beacon going off, and he sort of turns around and he's like, men, you're going to have to forgive me. I was to return you to the surface today, but now I need to get Dr. O'Connor. And I'll need 3 men to go with me.
Never mind the fact he's got an entire crew.
Yeah.
But no, let's just use these guys who have never seen anything or know anything about this world.
Right, because like, I guess the option would be he sends another team to get Malik, and then he returns these guys to the surface, and the credits roll. For some reason, he's got to bring Perry and everybody along. So they're like, sure, like, we'll go. We want to do it. And Mackenzie says, okay, but if you agree, first we must go and enjoy the spoils of the bath of immunity.
Yes. And so they all go for a dip in a green hot tub.
Yeah, it's a gross, murky, like, but not like a nice green. It just looks like it's got like old soap in it.
But they're all in there naked, including Dr. Barton, and they're all just like ogling her. And they're just like, ladies first. And he's like, no.
I laughed at that too, actually.
Yeah.
Just wait. I thought that was pretty funny.
And so they all dunk under and then come up, and then basically, and green hot tub water makes you bulletproof.
Well, the way he says it, he's like, it will only last 24 hours. But then you're like, oh, is this how Mackenzie stays invincible or alive forever because he bathes in this thing? They get out, and then, you get a little example of how they're invincible at this point. And this guy just pulls a gun out and shoots Mackenzie, and he like catches the bullet. And now he's pointing the gun at everybody else, and they're like, no, no, no. And he's just laughing. And then the guy shoots Jules, and then he's like, whoa, and he picks the bullet up. And then I think it's Perry's like, no, no, not me, whatever. And Jules is just like, come on, man, I've been hit harder with a ping pong ball. And then the guy just shoots everybody. And they're like, oh, I guess we're invincible. And then Mackenzie gives them all gold onesies.
Yeah, these are sweet gold coveralls.
Yeah.
And about this time is where we find out what Malik's plans are for Captain
Kuriaga.
Kuriaga, thank you. I just can't say these names.
Yeah, because now the Batmen they work for him. At first, you think they're just creatures and monsters as he created, but they're acting like henchmen. and they're in this like operating room.
Because they are henchmen.
Yeah, and
Yep.
they wheel Kuriaga in on a stretcher, and
Yep.
they're like doing his bidding almost.
Yeah, and this is where he opens up a couple of things, and there is a lion and a vulture.
Oh, these are the best, dude.
Yeah, and basically he announces that he's going to create a chimera of the three of them. So Kuriaga's brain is going into the lion, and parts of the vulture are also going into the lion.
It's so rad, dude. And he's like forcing
it's
Dr. Okada to
well.
watch this too. He's like, you gotta
Yeah.
watch me work, watch how I do it. And you should be.
I gotta say though, because the guy in the lion suit when they first show the lion, he's awesome. And it's a guy on all fours
Yep.
in a lion suit. And he's into it. Like he's moving his leg, like his arms, his legs, and he's just roaring and wiggling his head around. And I was like, this guy's having fun.
I love this lion suit because there's some of when it all comes near the end, there's some miniatures of it. And it's funny when you see the miniature of the lion, you're like, oh, that's totally fake. But when it's the guy in this suit, you're just all about it. Like you don't even think, oh, this looks silly. And it's just because he is so animated.
You still think this looks silly.
Well, he's just so animated, like the creature
totally.
is. And then when it cuts to like a static puppet, you're just like, oh man, bring the guy in the suit back because it's pretty amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we really know what Malik's up to, though. This is where you're like, okay, this movie is totally rad. And I think the last thing that happens with Mackenzie while they're gearing up, they get rocket packs. Then they all get given these gloves. And he's like, oh, these are all the things the gloves can do. And one finger shoots a paralyzing gas. Another one is a 100-yard lethal laser beam. And the other one's like a flamethrower. But then he's like,
Yeah.
don't use any of this unless I say. Or he's...
Yeah. These gloves gave me flashbacks to Starship Invasions.
Mm.
You know, because they had finger guns in that.
Oh yeah, you're right. They did.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
totally.
Yep.
Yeah, this is 12 years ahead of Starship Invasions.
It is.
Wow.
So, and I just want to point out that I have a note that says jetpacks ! Yes! !
The way they fly in these jetpacks are probably the hokiest part in this movie.
There's an awesome one later where
They're coming back down to the sub.
Yeah, well, with the big guy. Who's the big guy?
Poro or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, he can't. He's like his pack gets eaten by acid, right? So they all have to carry him, and they all fly, and they look like they're the Rockettes. It's just
They just lock arms and then
they just lock arms, and they all get lifted at one.
Yeah.
And it's just like you can pretty much see the entire. I have to give him credit because you can't,
Right.
but you can, in your mind, you can just see the entire rig that is carrying them.
They are
and lifting them up over this.
every time
ledge
they fly, arms locked. They're just like rigid in the sky. It's pretty great, actually.
Yeah, none of them are moving independently of each other. They're all like on a rail. It's quite funny.
Yeah, so these guys are ready to go. They're at the base of Mavik's volcano island, and they've surfaced in the submarine, and they're going to fly up, rocket pack up onto the island and get going. And we cut.
Well, they find a cave entrance, right? And they head in.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? And then we cut back to Mavik's lair, and it's a great cut. And he's just standing there with a knife in his hand, and he just slams it down into the skull of the lion and just starts like smooshing around and cutting this lion open. Yeah. And the bats are holding Dr. Okada's daughters, and they're like, you have to watch as well. And it's like this classic like crash zoom on her being like terrified of what she's seeing, and it zooms in, and the Batman is like holding her while she's like looking at the surgery to this lion,
forcing her head to point the right direction.
Yeah, and he says, like, Mavik's like, you see, your doctors are so advanced they can move an organ from one human to the other. He's like, here I am about to put a human brain inside this lion, a human brain and a savage beast. It will be able to understand my orders. And you're like, this guy is rad.
It's Cesar Romero, man.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
It's really cool.
So meanwhile, you've cut back, and the guys are all like working their way through the tunnels, and they encounter a bunch of giant rats.
Pretty sure it's your same boy from the lion suit.
Yep. and and they basically, like, we've already learned now that these are people. These are people's brains inside these animals, right? Or he led to believe that. And these guys are just like, murder them. We got to murder these things.
Right.
So they start firing off missiles and bullets and laser and
From their
all these
finger
explosions
gloves.
from their finger gloves, and it doesn't even phase these rats. They just keep coming. So they head back in the other direction and go down a different tunnel.
But the rats are the same thing. Like the second they turn, you're like, wow, this is a guy on his hands and knees in a suit.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
And then throughout all of this, we're cutting back to Malik's lair. And again, he's got lots of monitors and you're seeing what's happening outside. And I just have to laugh every now and then. You see these like 5 guys in these gold suits climbing up these styrofoam rocks. It just, I don't know. It's just these movies make me feel warm. It's such a familiar look, even though, you know.
Yeah, but at this point, all Malik cares about is making his creature, and he finishes, right, and then he sends it off and he shoots it with this ray that makes it 3 times bigger.
Well, no, so he's still working on the surgery. It's not the ray; he gives it a serum. So he's like,
okay.
yeah,
I'm jumping ahead.
He's like he's grafting he's like got the brain in the line. He's got her brain in it, and then he is like finishing sewing the wings of the buzzard onto it, and then he pulls out this big syringe, and it's like everything in the 60s was like just so overly narrated, and he's like, this my amplification serum will increase the size of the creature at least 3 times, all within a few minutes. He's like, now you see this lion with bird wing. It's just it's so funny, but it is a stuffed lion with bird wings, and there's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's a child's toy. But at the same time, we also understand how the rats are so big because he's just been playing around with these things and sets them loose.
Right. Yeah. So his whole volcano island, you assume, is riddled with weird creations and stuff.
Yeah. So he makes the lion big, and then we cut back to the guys, and they're all like walking along, and this is where they come across the acid pool we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so this is he orders the lion beast, like, because it's got Kuriaga's brain, and he's like, find me Mackenzie and kill him, and it flies out of his lair.
Yeah, and now we get to Mackenzie and them, and basically the lion just kind of perches himself up on the edge of the volcano and just watches everything.
Yeah, and they're in this like, there's this acid pool, and it's like almost
there's skeletons everywhere, and yet they decide to step in the acid anyway.
Yeah, I assumed the skeletons were from like other things where Malik has fed humans to his creature creations. So this is like,
it's bubbling and steaming though. There's like this, and it's a noxious. It's like it looks like Mountain Dew or something in there. Like
it's not the first place you're gonna look, like, or put. It's pretty obvious.
You're not just gonna step in it, and they're like trying to think how they're gonna have to swim across it. And I'm thinking, you have jetpacks, guys.
Yeah, but also there's a weird magnetic current that's going on the island. And it pulses and it disables their rocket packs for a little bit as well, which is like, a pretty cornball device to not allow them to be able to fly up and out. But that comes back later. The magnetic force comes back later, but they foreshadow it here. But then the rats just show up in this amphitheater where all the skeletons in the acid pool is, and they have to fight the rat. This is the same 3 rats, I'm sure. And they have to fight them.
It is totally. I think it's even supposed to be the same 3 rats.
Right, I guess because they don't kill them. You're right, yeah. And now it's like Malik is like, he's done his job. His hard work for the day's done. And he's like back in his like apartment area out looking all this. He's drinking a cocktail. He's having a good time. He's enjoying watching the chaos on all of his monitors. He's like, his work as a villain is done at this point.
Well, no, because he's still planning on turning Okada's daughter into something, right? And like he's getting ready to do that again, right? So because at one point, like Dr. Okada says, "I'll tell you everything you want to know," and he's like, "It's too late for that." That's right. It's like he doesn't care anymore. He just wants to make more weird, hybrid creatures, chimera things.
Dr. Okada's daughter strapped down to a gurney where he had the lion before, and he's ready to get down to business. And when they jump into the room, the Batman creatures just go after them, and then this turns into like
Yeah.
Like saying Batman. This looks like an Adam West Batman fight when they're punching these things.
Yes, it does. It just doesn't have the pow and the bops and the biffs.
And they're kicking each other, pushing each other. It's pretty fun.
And I mean, at one point, Mackenzie grabs Lucretia and throws her at Malik, and Malik is holding a syringe, and it jabs into her.
Malik pulls
and kills her.
Malik pulls a knife out.
Oh, it's a knife, right? Sorry,
he's already got his
and Mackenzie throws her at Malik, and Malik just stabs her. And it's like that was totally done on purpose.
And then Malik just does a runner. He just splits.
His two women are gone, right? One he's turned into this, lion griffin thing, and the other he just murdered. They fight the Batman, but I've got a note here that the Batmans aren't that tough.
They're so weak.
Because, so they get their asses handed to them, essentially, by these four guys. In their defense, it's 4-on-3, so there's only 3 Batmen. But
it's funny because they go in pursuit of Malik here after they beat these bat creatures, and they run down this tunnel, and then real bats fly out. And they're actually more concerned. Yes. They're all like, God, there's real bats or whatever. And it's like, you weren't afraid of these 6-foot mutant bats, and now you guys are bothered by these flying bats. It was a weird reaction.
Bats that would not bother them at all, but I guess Malik has trained them to attack or something like. But so Malik basically heads towards the Black Shark.
Yeah,
and so the rest of them all hightail it to the Alpha.
Yeah, so they all run back to the sub with Dr. Okada and his daughter, and they all hop in, and where we cut back to Malik's wife, and she just turns to ash. It's actually a cool visual effects shot. She just sort of vaporizes it. It's like this transition, and then she's like solid ash, and then starts to crumble. It's like something her power disappeared from her when she died. I don't know how it all worked.
Yeah, I assume it's because Malik and her are as old as Mackenzie is, right? And so now that she's dead, her body reverts to what it should be, which is nothing by that point because she's 300 years old.
No, that's a good observation. Yeah,
that's my guess. Anyway,
no.
I mean, they certainly don't tell you.
So the submarine comes up the water. Again, the water stuff just looks so cool. It feels cozy like Thunderbirds. It just looks good. And so they're loading on the submarine. Then the Black Shark appears around the corner. So now it's Malik piling in it.
And is this about where the volcano just starts erupting?
Yeah, so this is kind of...
For no reason?
Yeah, this is classic movie timing right here. Malik fires something in the air, and it kind of explodes, and it looks like a chaff bomb. And it all rains down over the top of the Alpha. And like here I'm thinking like, these are 2 submarines, and they're fighting like battleships. Like they haven't even gone underwater yet. They're like the biggest asset is being underwater, and they're staying above. It does something to the electrical. Now they can't dive, but then there's the magnetic field on the island, and it pulls the Alpha against the rocks, and they're kind of stuck there. And then Malik is like firing at them and the island, and he's hitting parts of the volcano because he's missing for some reason, and chunks of the volcano are falling apart and the island's rupturing. And then I think this is where Mackenzie just does one of his other, he's always upgrading the Alpha, and he pulls these special switches, and then the Alpha just turns into a jet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like its wings slide out, it gets a tail fin. Yeah. They turn on rocket thrusters, and they're like, we can get away from the magnetic field now.
Thunderbirds are go.
Exactly. And now the submarine rockets off, and now it's flying around like a jet, and it's cool. It's super cool. But at this time is when the Lion Beast decides it wants to chase after everything, because now they're flying around, and Malik's in the water shooting at them flying around, and the Lion Beast just decides, I guess.
Well, she's pissed at Malik, right?
So she's just decided that like, I'm going to take him out.
Yep.
And
she just goes and attacks the sub.
And there's these shots where it's just the solid leg puppet lion on a wire swinging around. The wings aren't moving or anything. It's not amazing. But then the beast lands on the front of the Black Shark submarine, and it's the actor again is back in the suit, and he is just thrashing on the submarine, and it looks so good.
Yes,
it looks so good. At least watch the trailer.
Well, and Malik's looking at it through the scope, essentially, of the gun he's trying to aim, right? It's that stereotypical kind of targeting thing that you'd see on anything out of World War II. And it's just like he's staring at it through the camera, and it's just like this lion just going at him.
It's just, it's so good. I swear at least watch the trailer or something of this movie if you haven't seen it, because the visuals are just so great. But yeah, this just is the big fanfare. And during all this, Malik's shooting off wild, and he destroys his own volcano base, essentially, and it starts to erupt. The Alpha dives. We assume Malik's dead, and the Lion Beast is dead, and the Black Shark is gone, because we're just now back at Latitude 0, and everything's fine, and green trees and blue skies, right?
And this is where I guess two of them decide to stay, and
Perry's going back.
What's his name? Perry's going back, and Perry's got his big, little pouch full of diamonds.
Yeah, he's ready to go. And this is,
and he's got taking all these pictures because he's a photographer.
And this is where we get a little more info into what Latitude 0 is about. Where, he says to Mackenzie, he's like, well, you've got all this sort of stuff, like, you've developed all this, as you say, for the better sake of bettering mankind. Like, when is the rest of the world going to know more of your secrets, or when will they do it? And he just kind of doubles down on what he said at the end of the first act, where he just says, like, no one can tell us the world is ready for any of it. But until then, I'll just keep working on my secret work here in Latitude 0. Yeah. I don't know what that means or how that works. Like, I don't know if it just didn't translate well, or
it feels like they're trying to set up a sequel.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
But I mean, I could be wrong on that because we never got one, but it almost feels like it. Never mind the fact that, it's essentially a Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ripoff. But that's sort of what it felt like to me.
Sure.
And then we get Perry going home, and this is where I need you to describe all this, because I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, this is fun. So the first thing that happens.
This is fun. This is weird.
So the first thing that happens is we get a lot of still photos of, like, dead people on sidewalks and roads and rockets going off. A lot of stock footage,
but with really upbeat music.
Yeah, it's not fitting the tone either. And I don't know if this is meant to be as if at first you think this is a lot of time has passed here or something, but then we just cut and we're back to the original ocean explorer, the Fuji from the beginning of the movie, and there's a wide shot, and Perry is just out there in a life raft, waving his arms.
Yeah, he's an inflatable life raft. He's waving his arms and an oar, and the same ship is like, oh,
there
look.
he is. There's a survivor, because they've been out there looking for this submersible. I don't know how long. I mean, we talk about, like, weird senses of time in movies. This one has a very strange sense of time between this. Like, you really don't know how long they're down there for.
I got to assume it's at least 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
Though. Like, this has to have occurred over, I mean, I guess it could be like 3, maybe.
God,
4,
that's a whirlwind 3 or 4 days. Like,
no, I know, but I mean, it's the stuff on, breaking into Malik's lair and stuff. That's all one day, but I mean, they got the volcano, and then their friend goes off to get healed and stuff, and then they basically, that's a night for sure, and then I don't think everything after that is supposed to take place
in a single day. That's a loaded day.
I got to assume it's a few days that they're there. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess it could, it's probably about a week.
So the Fuji is still out in the ocean looking for these guys after the volcano erupted initially. And then they pull Perry aboard, and it's kind of a little bit of a time jump. And Perry's just mid-sentence, and he is talking to all of them. And he's just like, no, like, I'm telling you, there's all this stuff down there. And they're like, yeah, buddy. And he's just like, look. He's like, I got photos of it. I got everything. And then he dumps out his little tobacco pouch full of diamonds, and it's just full of, like, tobacco. And he's like, there's no diamonds in here. And then a captain walks in, but it's Mackenzie. It's the same actor. And he's the captain of the Fuji, of the boat. Yeah.
And it's like, all I can think is, like, are they pulling a Wizard of Oz here? Like,
yeah,
that's obviously what they're going for, but it doesn't feel right.
And Perry's like, wait a minute, you're Mackenzie, and Mackenzie clearly doesn't know him. And he's like, what about my camera film?
But he is Mackenzie, and he's a long line of Mackenzies.
And he pulls the film out, and all of his film's empty. There's nothing on the negative, so he doesn't have any proof. And nobody believes him. And then they're just like, you know what? Let's admit him to the med bay because he's crazy. And then he turns around and he sees the lieutenant, and the lieutenant on the ship is Malik. You're like, wait a minute, what? And then this is the part that always threw me. It was like, they get a telegram about a bank receiving a bunch of diamonds in Perry's name.
Yeah.
On the boat.
It's just like, yeah.
And then
it's just like, well, I mean, that makes no sense, but whatever. Basically, what they're trying to tell you is he's not crazy. These are just descendants of these two people
from a long time ago.
To look just like them. They're just their descendants. They're like their great grandchildren, basically, who happen to do this, because they allude to that when Mackenzie on the ship says, basically, I come from a long line of naval Mackenzies, or whatever it is he says. So I mean, the fact that Malik's there is just weird. And then you find out he's rich anyway. So they basically made it so that he can't. They all think he's crazy for the stories he's told. But at the same time, they've set him up.
Exactly. Mackenzie
so he's got all the money.
Still gave him the money, even though they screwed him over. And so they're like, he's the wealthiest man on board. And so then the last line of the movie, because the movie opens with them saying, you know, longitude 180, latitude 0, and Mackenzie looks out and he's just like, well, we'll set the next landing for longitude 176, latitude 0. Credits roll.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it gives you that ending you love, which is just boom, it's over.
Yeah.
But it's that ending is just like that doesn't work, guys. It just doesn't work. I get what I think I kind of get what they're trying to do. I mean, honestly, I think they were trying to do, like, maybe it's a Wizard of Oz thing where it's just all a fever dream, and then they kind of tell you, no, it wasn't. We fooled you again, but it doesn't work. So. But for a kids movie, it's fun.
Like this movie, dude. I really like it. I like the monster. I like the look.
I think I got that impression, Sam.
So IMDb is a 5.9. Where are you in it?
Yeah, that's about right. I might even give it a 6.
Yeah. It's it's refreshing. It's looks
fun.
good. I would recommend watching it.
It's definitely a product of its time, but that gives it a charm.
Yeah. Would you remake this?
I don't know if you really could. Yeah. I mean, because it is kind of a ripoff of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the Island of Dr. Moreau. You could do a variation of it, but I mean, and again, like, there's a lot of Bond tropes in here too, so it pulls a lot of stuff from a lot of places. So maybe, I mean, they did try to remake the Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer, and nobody watched it.
My favorite, Dr. Moreau. That's the good one.
I still don't think I've seen it.
Marlon Brando.
No, I know. But I don't know if you really could, or if you'd need. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it would work if you tried to do it. I think
that's the right answer, because I like the subject matter. I like the concept. I like submarines. I like giant creatures. I like all that stuff. But it
wouldn't have the charm. It would be a CGI.
Yeah, and you would have to make it so dark and crazy, it would lose the fun. Yeah.
But Dr. Barton's outfits could certainly come back anytime.
So this film, originally, this was a co-production between Toho Films and American Television Production Company. So this was...
And Toho famous for all the Godzillas, all
exactly.
the Ghidorahs, the Mothras, the everything.
So it was 4-star productions under Don Sharp, who were sort of side funding this in the U.S., and that's how they had the U.S. connection with the actors and stuff. But apparently, so after the American cast were flown out to Japan, like, you know, begin production, off you guys go, Sharp called bankruptcy and pulled out of the picture in the contract. So these guys land.
Oh, wow.
And the budget got halved on the day of shooting. So
wow.
I would have liked to.
I just had a movie have that happen to us. Well, it's only 10%, but still.
So they had an option right there and then. They were either scrap the film, everybody go home, or produce it with half the budget. And so they still made it. So I would have liked to see what this movie would have been with twice the money, because it still looked good.
Yeah, I think we probably just would have had some nicer sets and some little more realistic miniature work and stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Although, and the script there may have been more to it. Like, Malik is essentially in one location through 90% of the movie. So there's probably a lot of that. They brought Cesar Romero on set for 12 days or something. And, maybe they could have had him for 20 or something, but yeah.
Yeah, there's two things that happened with this in the release of this movie. So this was ran when the TV syndication contract ended. This movie was unavailable. Like, you just couldn't get it. Like, talk about an outer reel. This movie was just unobtainable. And there was a big dispute over the rights and so after it did that initial run, everybody didn't know, like, people wanted to re-release it, but they couldn't get their hands on it. They couldn't, decide how to do it. And so it sat.
Well, we had a hell of a time trying to find this.
Even
right?
so, and this is after release, because, like, there's physical copies of this movie that, I think it was 99 I saw, 2000 or 2001 I saw this movie the first time on a DVD, and it was great. So there's still some kind of battling there. But the other thing, too, was Akira Takada and Akira Harada, both of them, this is their first movie where they actually had to do their own English speaking for their ADR. So before that, they were always dubbed by other people, but for years and years. And so this is kind of cool, too.
That explains why I've got a note early on that the ADR is actually pretty good.
And it shows, too. So this is their first time where they finally broke through. They're like, yeah, your English is good enough. You can do it. Well, cool, man. Look, this was fun. Thanks for sitting it through. I know I enjoyed this more than you did, but this one.
No, I did enjoy this. I mean, this is what I would call a family-friendly kids movie, basically. But I did enjoy it. It's something my kids would have rolled their eyes at, but I'm old enough to would have enjoyed it because, I mean, I probably would have, if this had been on TV, I would have been able to catch it probably in the late 70s and stuff, and would have had a blast watching it.
No, it's pretty good. Well, join us next time for episode 20. Big 20. We're growing up. And as always, anything but casino. Thanks, man. This was fun.
All right. Thanks, man.
We'll talk to you.
Good night.
Therefore, whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television.